2, 1.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Iveta Bekvarova, and I'm Director of Global Academic and Professional Affairs at Hill's Pet Nutrition. Thank you for joining this webinar. To ensure we can create a veterinary profession that is fit for the future, one in which all veterinary professionals can enjoy a rewarding and successful career, we must overcome the obstacles that some of our colleagues face, obstacles which can affect their wellness and well-being. This is why Hill's Pet Nutrition is delighted to support the work of the WSAVA's Professional Wellness Group. The issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace is a very important topic, and it is an issue that Hills takes very seriously. We hope that everyone listening to these expert speakers enjoys learning more about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and is inspired to create a culture of belonging and inclusion within their own practice.
Thank you, Dr. Bekvarova, and welcome everyone. My name is Elika Lemzaki, and I'm a veterinarian and certified professional coach. I'm also a member of the WSAVA's Professional Wellness Group and will be moderating this latest WSA webinar called Creating a Culture of Belonging, Diversity, an inclusion approach to optimizing team performance in veterinary practice. We're very glad that you found the time to join us today as we discuss this important topic. As we all know, in many parts of the world, there are severe shortages of veterinarians and veterinary nurses or technicians. And this is happening at a time when the demand for our services has never been higher. Understandably, this creates even greater stresses on our already hard-pressed veterinary teams. And this is something that we in the WSAVA Professional Wellness Group are working to address. This situation makes it even more important that we embrace all of the members of our veterinary teams, support a culture of belonging, and create working environments in which we can all flourish despite our differences. This is the topic of our webinar today. Our first speaker is Dr. Debbie Stone. Dr. Stone is qualified both as a veterinarian and a social worker and has developed an evidence-based veterinary continuing education program called The Social Side of Practice. This covers areas including veterinary wellness, communication, teamwork, organizational culture, and leadership. She is also a member of the WSAVA's Professional Wellness Group. She will talk more broadly about what diversity, equity, and inclusion is and why it matters. Our second speaker is Dr. Nienke Endenberg. She is a human psychologist and teaches veterinary students at the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands how to manage their own wellness during vet school and beyond. She's chair of the WSAVA Professional Wellness Group and will give some practical approaches to applying diversity and inclusion in your practice. We would love lots of questions for the Q&A at the end, so please enter them into the chat box and our speakers will answer them at the end. Finally, I'd like to thank Hill's Pet Nutrition for its support of the work of the WSAVA Professional Wellness Group. And now, I will hand over to our first speaker, Dr. Debbie Stone.
Thank you very much, Ellie, and welcome everyone to Creating a Culture of Belonging. I'm happy to be here with you as a member of WSAVA's professional wellness group, and I have to admit right from the start, I'm not an expert in equity, diversity, and inclusion, but I have joined the journey and I'm committed to learning as much as I can about it and taking action wherever and whenever I can, and I invite you to do the same. Now, this isn't a talk about how diversity, equity, and inclusion leads to the success of organizations, things like greater innovation, productivity, and prosperity. It's about how it leads to the success of people, to health and well-being. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a wellness issue, and it's connected to belonging. So these are the areas that we'll be touching on today. And my aim is to inspire you with possibilities, to close the gap between your current reality and what you aspire for in your organization, wherever you work, whether it's in private or corporate veterinary practice, shelter medicine, or at a veterinary or veterinary technician or nursing college. Mother Teresa was wise. She said, "If we have no place, it is because we've forgotten we belong to each other." We do belong to each other, and we shouldn't forget it. Belonging is a fundamental human need. It's having a place in the world and holding a space in the world and knowing from the deepest part of us that each and every one of us matters. And it extends beyond our homes and neighborhoods to our workplaces. And belonging can be understood through its relationship to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let's take a look at each of these. Diversity is a fact. It refers to the presence of differences in things such as race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, culture, religion, national origin, abilities, and so much more. And differences can be visible or invisible. And even when invisible, once they're known, they're often measurable and on the whole, quantifiable. So all in all, diversity is a fact. Equity is a choice. Equity refers to fairness, to the policies, practices, and processes that ensure that everyone has access to the same opportunities. So it's a choice as to what policies, practices, and processes are put into place in our workplaces. It's a choice as to whether we create equal opportunity. Inclusion is an action. While diversity is about differences, inclusion is about embracing those differences. Inclusion is the deliberate action we can take to create workplaces where all differences are welcomed, accepted, and appreciated. And belonging is an outcome. It's the outcome of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here we can see the overlap of the three of them, with belonging in the center. Without the presence of all three, there can't be belonging. Someone will always be left out. If there is diversity and equity, but no inclusion, someone will be left out. If there is diversity and inclusion, but no equity, someone will be left out. And if there is equity and inclusion, but no diversity, someone is being left out. It's only in the presence of all three that there is belonging. Looking at these hands, do you see diversity? Do you see equity? And do you see inclusion? In the midst of these three, there is belonging. And belonging is important. As quoted, we can't become our best selves without feeling like we belong to a tribe that sees us, respects us, and lifts us up. And why is it important? Well, firstly, we are evolutionarily wired for belonging. We are social beings. It is in our DNA. From an evolutionary perspective, Belonging enables us to be successful with hunting, gathering, protecting, sheltering, and procreating. In other words, belonging enables survival. So we are wired for connection, for being a part of community. We are drawn to being held within the hands of others. Beyond this, studies show that belonging improves health and well-being, as can be appreciated in the many points here. The importance of belonging is not just understood through the lens of evolutionary psychology, as I just mentioned, but also developmental psychology, as can be appreciated here in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As humans, our need for love and belonging has to be met before our self-esteem can grow, and then from there that we can self-actualize, which is reach our fullest potential. And the need for love and belonging extends to all areas of our lives, including our workplaces. Think about how much time we spend at work. On average, we typically spend more time at work than any other daily activity of living. So to feel that we are loved, meaning cared about and belong at work, is incredibly important. It enables us to live into the fullness of ourselves and become our best selves. Studies also tell us that with belonging, people are more likely to participate and be engaged in their work. They're more likely to donate their time and energy to help their colleagues and improve the workplace, and they feel more satisfied in their work, and they're healthier and happier. And because of all this, belonging offers the many benefits pointed out here, all of which improve organizational performance. So altogether, belonging is unquestionably important for people and for organizations. So how can we create a culture of belonging? Well, the answer is simple. It's through social change. And as Margaret Mead said, all social change comes from the passion of individuals. So recognizing the importance of belonging, I could ask you, might you have a passion for this? Now, I'm going to focus on the actions that each of us can take in our workplaces, the things that we can do and the ways that we can be to create a culture of belonging. And they're especially directed to those of us who are in the dominant, or what we would call majority culture, but they're relevant to everyone. And they're not meant to be prescriptive. They're offered as invitations. But before I share these approaches, I'll touch on what organizations can do, because change is needed not just, what I call side to side as between peers, but also from the top down as well. Problems with diversity, equity, inclusion are often systemic in nature, which means systemic change is needed. To create this change, organizations can start with a 360-degree audit. This requires data collection, looking at the demographics, looking at who's actually here, who's working in our workplace, and then reaching out to connect with people, perhaps holding interviews or focus groups. It can be done formally or informally, but it's connecting and having conversations with people. And it also should include looking at and reviewing the policies and practices of human resources, especially recruitment and promotion. And then, knowing where you are, develop a vision for where you want to be. And from there, you can design a plan of action to achieve that vision and carry it through. All of this will require getting right down to the ground level of things, really looking at your organization from the ground up, and then stepping forward to walk the path, as lumpy and bumpy and uneven as it is, and knowing you might trip and fall. But have faith that you'll wear that path smooth and get to where you want to go. And now the personal approaches. The very first one is knowledge, because knowledge is power. So become familiar with the terms diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. These terms are full of meaning, and the more you appreciate the depth and breadth of each of these and start to interconnect them, the more you'll have an appreciation of the possibilities for the difference you can make and be able to create a culture of belonging. Familiarize yourself with the challenges faced by people of difference. Sensitize yourself to them. In seeing them, you can do something about them. Commit to learning about all forms of oppression. Oppression is all around us. It's built within our systems, and sometimes so much so that we can't even see it. So learn more in whatever ways you can. What's in the news? What's moving around social media? What's in the movies you're watching and the books you're reading? It doesn't require formal education. You can pick up on oppression just by tuning into this, setting your attention to this on a day-to-day basis. Be deeply curious about others, as curious as a cat. Show interest in who they are, what they have to say, what they bring to the table. And embrace generous listening. This is listening only to find out what is true for the other person. It's listening to understand, not to judge. Such listening could take us a very, very long way towards less hurt in the workplace and more connection. And be aware of unconscious or implicit bias. We all have biases. They're normal. They're sourced from the shortcuts our brains naturally use to navigate the vast amount of information in the world. And they lead us to make snap decisions about who we prefer to be with and who we would like to avoid. The problem is, biases can be misleading. They can lead to discriminatory thinking and behavior. Now, there's a yin-yang to biases in that there are conscious biases and unconscious biases and fluidity between them. The temptation is to deny that we have biases, right? However, we need to acknowledge them. Once we do, we can have some ownership over them. Become more aware of your biases and then make an action plan to adopt a more inclusive attitudes and behaviors. Now, all of what I've just shared might seem a bit vague, or you might not necessarily feel like you can identify with it, because most of us don't like to think we have unconscious biases because we're not aware of them, right? But if you were to take some time to review just a few of these videos, you'll really quickly get it. They are so well done, so informative. I think you'll find them eye-opening. And if you're interested in learning about your unconscious biases, you can take the implicit association test. It's available here at this link. The IAT actually offers 14 tests that assess unconscious bias. And commit to cultural humility. Cultural humility is being willing to look at the culture of another nearly through their eyes, to recognize aspects of their cultural identity that's important to them from their way of seeing it. And how can you do this? Well, adopt a posture of humility. That's modesty, meekness, and humbleness. We typically think our culture is the norm, so to really learn about another's culture requires humility. Honor the beliefs, customs, and values of others, and acknowledge the differences and accept people for who they are. Culture is like a rainbow. You can't always see it, but when you do, it's a thing to behold. And share experiences and stories. Why? Because they create belonging. Encourage team building activities. They bring people together, create social bonds, and these are vital to creating belonging. And encourage storytelling. Stories reflect how we see our lives. They're windows into our lives. So tell your diversity story and encourage others to tell theirs. That may require some vulnerability, but vulnerability is linked to courage and growth. And typically, when people show vulnerability, it enables stronger bonds to form. Our stories inspire, humanize the workplace, and make space for others to tell theirs. In these stories, recognize the differences, appreciate them, don't make assumptions because of them, and be patient as you work across them. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And I know we all have heard that, but try. Consider what might it really be like for them. Treat people with respect. Most of us are familiar with the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This implies that other people would like to be treated the way you would like to be treated. But the alternative is the platinum rule. This acknowledges that we are all different, and being different, we prefer to be treated differently. Treat others how they would like to be treated. And I love this quote, everyone is you living a different life. Treat them as such. And use inclusive language. Instead of, okay guys, say, okay folks, or team, or people, or peeps. And instead of, she's disabled, or he's an addict, which labels the person, which is stigmatizing, you can say, she's a person with a disability, or he has a problem with substance use. And avoid saying something like, wow, he's a bit of a schizo, isn't he? It utterly disregards schizophrenia as a medical condition and the lived experience of anyone who has it. What if one of your colleagues, unbeknownst to you, has schizophrenia or has a family member who does? And be an ally. This is a powerful way to support belonging. Take on the struggle of someone when you see discrimination or unfair practices. If they don't have a voice, do what you can to give them a voice. Speak alongside them, amplify their voice, stand beside them, stand up even when you're scared. And understand that learning more about diversity is your responsibility, not that of anyone who's a person of difference. If you ask or expect them to teach you, you're burdening them, adding to their oppression. And here's a list of books from the AVMA's website from Want to Be a Stronger Ally? The website also provides a synopsis on each of these, which can really help you to choose which one might really capture your interest. But I believe they're an excellent, excellent set of readings. As you read, ask yourself some questions like, what does this have to do with me? And how is this landing with me? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And how could I explain the things that I'm learning to someone else? And what will I choose to do differently as a result of what I've read? In summary, I'd like to close with this. Now is a time to spread the word about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. These are more than trendy words. They're here to stay, to push us to look at everything with fresh eyes and embrace the diversity each of us brings to the workplace. Creating a culture of belonging is everyone's responsibility. We can create workplaces wherein the human need to belong is realized. We can help one another be who we really are, grow, become, and share the best of who we are. And as we in WSAVA's professional wellness group say, cultivating a culture of belonging in the workplace is a journey, not a destination. It takes learning, commitment, patience, endurance, and tenacity. And it begins with you and your willingness to embrace the everyday actions you can take. The time is now. Join the journey.
So thank you very much, Dr. Stone, for a very interesting overview. And I would like now to invite Dr. Nienke Endenberg.
Thank you, Ellie, for introducing me. Can everyone see my slide? That's different if you're looking at YouTube. If not, I would like to hear it. Okay, very welcome to this webinar of the Professional Wellness Group. Let's see if it works. Yes. The title of my talk is Playing to Your Team's Strength, Practical Tips to Boost Team Performance, improve veterinary well-being, and enhance animal welfare, because I think they're included. It's of course about the veterinary teams. That's the veterinarian, but also the vet nurses and maybe other staff members that will help the veterinary team. I think belonging to a workplace, as Dr. Stone already explained, is very important, and I would like to go into it a little bit further and the role of social support. I also would like to ask you, who of you is perfect? And I think no one is perfect, but I would like to tell you that a team can be, because we're all a bit different, and how to create a perfect team in veterinary practice. And I will give some practical tips for that. Okay, social support. Dr. Stone already touches on a little bit, also with belonging. It's a theoretical construct that expresses the degree to which individuals are socially embedded and have a sense of belonging, obligation, and intimacy with others. And it's very important. It goes in the veterinary practice, but I also see it at the vet school, and especially now in this COVID-19 period, when a lot of students couldn't come to the school and we all had to do a lot of things online. It lacked a lot of social support, and that makes life a lot more difficult. So social support is not a luxury, it's very important, and multiple studies have demonstrated strong associations between social support and survival. That's also what my next slide is about. Social relationships are life-saving. This is a very good study in 2010 done. It's a meta-analysis. And you can see that social relationships make the survival rate much higher. If you have social relationships, social support, then it's more life-saving, or if you don't have, you will have illnesses, and the death rate will be much higher than, for instance, when you have bad habits like smoking or alcohol consumptions. So social relationships are not a luxury, it's necessary for us as social beings. That can be given by humans, by other humans, by friends and families, members of the vet practice, but also, as you of course know, by animals. Animals are also gives you a lot of social support. If you have a bad day at the office and you come home and there's your dog or cat and he or she is looking at you, you think, well, at least one person in this world is understanding me, and that really helps. It gives you a very good feeling, and it's very good against a lot of illnesses. Okay, I'll explain a little bit about Meredith Belbin. And Meredith Belbin is a British scientist. He's still alive. He's 95 years old. And he did a lot of research into the area of when our teams performing well, or which teams are performing well and which teams don't perform well. And he found that there are some team roles. He found 9 team roles that if they're there in the team, that you have a good team. And these team roles have all different aspects, and they all have their good abilities and their things that they're not so good in. It describes behaviors when we work with others. And you can see that people have talents, and people have talents also have pitfalls that they're not good at. Differences in people, in veterinarians or members of the vet team, we need differences. That's what Meredith Belbin found. We need differences. Teams that have people with differences in it are the best working teams. If they all have the same talents, then there will be the same pitfalls and that team won't work good. So we need the differences. It's not only about accepting differences, it's what we actually really need. And we should be happy that we're all different. And what he also said is no one is perfect because we all have our bad sides, but a team can be perfect because everyone is having qualities and other people can find it in a better way if it doesn't work. So if someone is very good in taking the lead, but maybe not so good in looking at small details, maybe someone else is very good in details and not very good in taking the lead. So this is what he says: no one can be perfect, but a team can be. And maybe you're thinking now, where is this talk going to? It's a lot of different things, from social support to team roles of Belbin, and now we go to neurodiversity. But at the end, it will all come together. Judy Singer, she's a psychologist who has autism, is starting to use this term neurodiversity in the late 1990s. And she explained it, and she explained about autism, what it does to her. Now, there is a lot of talk about, and also a lot of discussion about neurodiversity, and I don't want to get into it, but what I would like to state is that neurodiversity means that people can have certain developmental disorders, and that can be normal variations in the brain. And people with these characteristics also have certain strength. And we can think, if we think about autism, about Temple Grandin. She's a great professor, and she has done a lot of livestock research, and she's a very good thinker. She has Asperger. It also means that she has some things with social interactions, but she's a great scientist. And this is only one term, autism, but autism looks very much different. It can be from people that are not able to speak and have a very low intelligence, until Temple Grandin with a very high intelligence. She still finds it very difficult to have social interactions. But if you think about that sort of things, she is a great scientist. Another part of neurodiversity can be ADHS or dyslexia or dyscalculia. Some people say there are more versions of it, but as I said, I don't want to go into that discussion. Okay, examples of neurodiversity can be that you can be overstimulated by noises. So people, things I don't hear, other people hear, and they're very sensitive to it, and they can be overstimulated, but they also have the awareness of very small details. Things I don't see, they see. And sometimes that can be very important, especially in the vet practice. There can be people that have difficulties with reading and writing. And I think in the UK that dyslexia is almost 1 out of 10 persons has dyslexia, but they have great spatial awareness. So I don't can write or read very well, but I have a great spatial awareness. And someone who can be a great surgeon also can have problems with social interactions. And the question is always, if you have problems with something, but you're also very good at something, can we incorporate that in the vet practice? And what can we do to overcome the difficulties? So don't always look at the disabilities, but look at the abilities. What can we, how can we overcome the difficulties that are there? And Oliver said some time ago, a person is disabled not by their impairment, but by the failure of the environment to accommodate their needs. And I think that's very true. Although I know in the vet practice, certain things has to be done. So I don't say that everyone is able to work in the vet practice, but I think if we look at it in a different way and And if we look at it in a way that we need the differences, then I think a lot of people are able to work in a vet practice. Okay, how can you play to your team's strength? And I would like to give some practical strategies and steps for success in the vet practice. I think the most important part is to set a goal. What do you want to achieve in the vet practice? And if you ask people, they say, yeah, of course, you know, to cure animals or, well, to help animals and owners. But I think that that's too easy. If you asked the different team members to write down on a piece of paper what their goal is in the vet practice, then you see people have all sorts of different goals. And I think it's very important to agree, where are we going? And if you have the same or a common goal, then it will be easier. If you don't have it, or you don't even speak about it, it will be difficult to work together because everyone is going somewhere else. So set, but you have to do that as a team, a common goal. Where do you want to go? And that also can be a moment in time that if people have different goals, that you say, well, okay, you have a different goal, which is okay, but maybe you don't fit in this practice. I don't say that everyone always can work in a certain vet practice. There can be moments when that's not possible and you have to say goodbye, and someone can go somewhere else. And I think it's also very good to be open about differences. As I said, and that's also what Belbin found, we need differences. It's good for a team to have differences, and you should feel safe to talk about it, that it's okay to be different in a special way. And I think it's better to talk about it and to see how do you deal with it, because to be honest, it's not only about neurodiversity or people that are gay or people who have colored skin. I think we all are different and we all have our difficulties and our differences. But I think it's good to be open about that and to talk about it. How can we overcome the difficulties? Also, what aspects of your job you do enjoy? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? What do you dislike? Maybe there are tasks that everyone does dislike and you have to split it. But it's nice to see and to discuss this in a team meeting. When I say that to veterinarians or to practice owners, sometimes they say, well, we don't have time for this hassle. It takes too much time, all this talking. We just want to get to work and get the job done because we have an awful lot of work. And that's true. I know that a lot of veterinarians, there is so much work to do. But in my experience, it is if you take a little bit of time to set a goal and to involve all the team members and be open about the differences and see who is doing what, then it will save time afterwards. It will save also a lot of discussions and also a lot of irritation. So at the beginning, maybe it takes a little bit of time, but it will pay off later. And if you have the same goal, it's also easier to give members responsibility for the work they are doing. I can imagine that vet nurses or vet technicians, they are very often at the front desk. That's the place where they work. They also know what they need there. Maybe a veterinarian who is more in a room where they have their owners, they need other things. But if you give people responsibility for the piece of the practice where they work within certain limits, they feel responsible and they also know what they need at that place. It's also good to discuss and to set this is your task, and you're responsible for that. And also to support each other when someone is having a difficult time at the home or in another way. It's also good to support each other. You can go home, I will take your task and do it now for you, but also to celebrate successes. I know that everyone knows this, but giving compliments is something that's very often not done. You know, you should do it, maybe, but maybe only when it goes wrong, people will tell you. It's also very nice to say, well, you did that in a very good way. Or sometimes to have, for instance, on a Friday afternoon, to have a small party, or to give each other small presents. That also helps to give a very nice atmosphere in the practice. And if there are problems, I think solutions can be found. And it's also good to have the whole team involved in that, that it shouldn't be one person who's had to think about the solutions, but we can do it together. And if you involve everyone, you also have more people that can be creative and that they find their solutions. If it's only the practice owner that should find solutions, it can become rather difficult. Involve the team. And every team member should feel a part of that team. I think that's very important. And you also will see that people will say that they're sick, or they will leave. That will happen less often. If people feel they're involved and their involvement is worthwhile and valued, they will stay longer. Well, and they also enjoy their work more, which is good for the veterinary team, but it's also good for the clients and also for animal welfare. If you come into a vet practice where the team is happy and doing a lot of nice things with each other, clients will feel that. So it's good for the professional wellness of the veterinary team, but it's also good for the owners, and by that also good for the animals and animal welfare. If they work together to find creative solutions, that also is very nice, and they will make fewer mistakes and they feel valued. However, there can be one disadvantage. As you know, the veterinary team, they're most times people that are very engaged. They most times love their job, but they also can be too engaged. I think vet members also should take care of each other and say, well, you've been working too much lately. Take a day, take a break, or shall I help you? Because that's something that will happen in the veterinary practice very often. So also take care of each other. In summary, I think it's very important to have a set goal for the practice, and that you will be open for individual differences. It's not only about saying, oh, we are different, but more valuing it. We should be different, because only when we are different, we can have a very good team. And you should adapt to practices and to accommodate them. So find out what people need. Maybe they need another work schedule, or maybe they should work a little bit later. So see what people need so they can do a good job in the vet practice. And celebrate and recognize the whole team. That also gives a good spirit. And as I said, it's good for the veterinary team, for the clients, but also for animal welfare. Thank you very much for listening. It's over to you, Ellie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ninke, for very informative advice. And by looking at the lectures from both speakers, Dr. Stone discussed the importance of creating the culture of belonging and the types of differences in individuals, and why it's important for individuals and the organizations for which they work that everybody is included. Also the role of workplace belonging in improving business and practice performance. And then she went on to suggest the types of steps that can be taken by individuals. So for example, seek more knowledge, become informed, become more aware of conscious and unconscious biases, commit to cultural humility, share experiences and stories, and treating people with respect. But also the steps that can be taken by organizations such as social change in order to create a culture of belonging by recognizing and embracing their differences. Then Dr. Endenberg looked specifically at diversity, equity, and inclusion in the veterinary workplace. She discussed extensively social support and the fact that social relationships are life-saving, that we need diversity in veterinary teams. So Belbin team roles can be important in setting different behaviors, talents, and pitfalls of different people. And then discussed that teams should seek agreement in goals, be open about differences, share responsibility, and the role of motivation in a team. And to quote Dr. Stone, cultivating a culture of belonging in the workplace is a journey and not a destination. So now I can see that we have some questions, so let's get started with the Q&As. So we have one question, which is about the importance of blind spots. So this is probably for you, Dr. Stone. So can you tell us more about the importance of the unconscious bias and how can we overcome unconscious bias? So how can we become aware of what we are not aware of?
It's a very good question. Yes. Yeah, we do have these unconscious biases, and it's a part of normal, natural human functioning. It's related to the way our brain functions. So it's something that we all have, and it's something that we can all work towards. I think a key thing is to look up information about unconscious biases. Think about what stereotypes we might hold, what assumptions do we make, and look up information about it. I would suggest going online and just looking at them. And then as you're reading of these different stereotypes, reflect on, is that me? Do I think that way? Or do I respond that way? And open up conversations with people, talk with other people about it, because it's through the challenging of one another that you can often learn at a deeper level. So it's growing your awareness, and so that's going to require curiosity. So checking online, there's so much information there. Opening conversations with other people. It's learning as much as you can about stereotypes and assumptions, and reflecting on it, and then trying to integrate that as a part of yourself and carrying yourself forward, catching yourself in those ways when something does show up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So would it be best that we have an outside person start this discussion in a team? Do you think that it would be helpful?
An outside person, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but sometimes a team or a group will become so kind of entwined with one another, either caught within a group think or caught within dynamics that keep them caught up, like it's in a spider web. And by having someone come in from the outside and speaking, that creates some a freshness, a change, and there can be an openness there that may not be there if someone within the group stands up and speaks up. So I think there could be, advantages or disadvantages either way. I would encourage you first for someone within your team to stand up and open the conversation. Maybe start the conversation with a couple of people and then open it up to the whole team. But bringing in someone else from the outside, sometimes that's just enough of a change to create a shift. So it could go both ways, could go either way. Maybe it depends on your team and that.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question which I think is for Dr. Endenberg. Dr. Endenberg, you talked about giving responsibility and to team members, and sometimes the practice owners or the practice managers may fail to delegate or may fail to give responsibility for fear that this person is not going to perform properly. So how do you think we can address this issue?
A very good question. Thank you. Yes, I know that some practice owners find it very difficult, but I think you can start when you have a common goal with a small task and say, well, can you do this and this before that time? And that you also make that question and ask them if they can do it. And then later you can evaluate if that's okay, if it went okay, and if not, what could have been better. So I think giving feedback in a proper way, and that's also very important. So tell members of your team what they did good and what could have been better, and start it in that way. And if that is a way to get more confidence as a leader of the team, that some other people also can do some things, because also when your practice becomes very big, you just can't do everything on your own. It's impossible, and other people can do also a lot of things. So start small and make it a bit bigger. Is that a question, an answer?
Thank you very much, Dr. Endenberg. Now you've got another question, which I think could be for both of you. So somebody says, one of our team members has a psychological problem that makes it difficult for him to be in group sessions, and this separates him from others. How can we be more inclusive? So I would ask Dr. Stone first to answer this question.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I would approach the person first. So one member of the team, it doesn't have to be like a leader or manager. It could be a person who's maybe, the closest peer to that person, the person that they're most comfortable with, and checking in with them, what would help them be most comfortable, what's going to work for them. And then whatever solution they feel it might be best would be what they could go with. Perhaps in opening the conversation, someone could have some suggestions ready. So in other words, like, would it be helpful for you if you're not necessarily comfortable right, in the middle of the group? Would you like to sit or join in sort of at the back of the group, the back of our team here? Or would it be helpful for you, if we're having a meeting in the treatment area, that you don't even have to be sitting with us and joining us as such, joining us in that physical presence, but would it be helpful for you to perhaps to be moving about, doing some odds and ends in the treatment room so that you can be doing your thing and tuning in to the degree that you want to? Or is it something that you're so uncomfortable that it may be helpful for one of us to, you don't even necessarily have to be at the meeting, but we can share back to you. what's going to work for you. And sometimes wherever you start, even if it's like the person is right out of the picture then, and you think, well, that's not even going to work, but just start there, because it may be gradually with time that person can shift to different positions to become more a part of the entire group, like the group meeting. It doesn't have to be all the way, always the way it is from the start, and kind of work with that.
Thank you, Dr. Stone. Dr. Endenberg, anything that you would like to say about this? Any additional comment?
I think Dr. Stone said it very well, but I can imagine, I know I do have some clients that find it very difficult to have eye contact, and we're doing things online. So I can imagine that someone is sitting in another room behind a laptop. It can be in the vet practice, but not physical in the same room. And they also can switch out their cameras, for instance, but they can hear it or they can give their commands. So that's, but I think you always should start asking the person themselves what they would see as a solution for themselves, what would be good for them, and then work from there.
Thank you both. So we have one more question. So you talked about, Dr. Endenberg, about the role of setting, the importance of setting common goals. And in some cases, practice owners may simply not do that. They tend to forget how important it is for the motivation of their team members. So what do you think happens when they don't do that? And how can they start doing it more often? Okay,
well, when you don't have a set goal, most times it will be people leaving very quickly, go to another practice. So you have new veterinarians, if you can find them, every moment. And there's a lot of struggles and negative energy. And if you think now after this webinar, oh, I forgot it, I should be doing it. Well, you can set up a meeting tomorrow or the day afterwards and ask your team members what you want to do, and they can come up with common goals. Let them write down on a piece of paper what they think is the goal of the vet team or of the vet practice, and you can work from there and see if you can come to a consensus.
That's right. Thank you very much. Another question is, what happens when a new member joins a team? What do we do then? Should we have an induction plan? Every team has its own culture, and when a person joins a team, he has to adapt to this culture. So what would your advice be? And I would like the perspective of both of you. So Dr. Endenberg.
I think it's always good to have maybe a book that you know what's going on in that practice, and to also have a meeting to explain about the goal. Actually, it would be better if there would be a new member that you, before the new member comes in, say, well, the goal of our practice is this and this and this and this. Would you like to be with us to get the goal done, to go there, and then also to ask what are your strengths and your weaknesses in a meeting, and then to fit someone in. But I think you should pay attention, but it's also very helpful to have I'm a bit old-fashioned, so I believe in books, books where you can see how things are run in the practice. What are the procedures, that you already can look a little bit into that. That's what I would do.
Thank you, Dr. Endenberg. Dr. Stone.
Yeah, well, to add to what Nienke's just said, I think it's important for practices, no matter what size your practice is to have a mission, So a mission statement, a vision statement, and have a set of values that are agreed upon. And they can be the foundation for these goals that Ninka is talking about. And so sharing them right from the beginning, being open about them, promoting them, and speaking in such a way that you're breathing life into them, because I think that can be inspiring. And then also, I think as part of onboarding that person is creating a buddy system. So, after sharing all of this information, the broad picture, their values, and some of the specifics, regarding orientation around the practice and introductions to the people, but set up a buddy system. So, and this is going to be your best bud here. And if you have any questions in particular, this person's going to be like right with you, and feel free to ask, and that, so that someone starts feeling grounded and anchored to at least one person, not just the practice as a whole, which could be, a big thing in itself and could even be overwhelming, but connected to one person that they could have nearly like as a mentor or a turn-to person, and that can keep them grounded. So that perhaps that can be helpful as well.
So you think that the practice should assign this task to one person to become the buddy of the newcomer, sort of?
It could be, yes, exactly. I think that's what I would go with. And some people within a practice, exactly like what Ninka, what you were saying, is we all have our own strengths and our differences. Some people are very naturally, like what I call connectors. They connect with people, and that one person in the clinic actually keeps connected to everyone and keeps everyone sort of in a good place. So if you have one of these connector type people, that would be perfect. Sometimes the role could be perhaps assigned with someone in the same role. So if you're both veterinary technicians. So I guess you could kind of look at it and decide, perhaps person by person that you're onboarding what might be the best. But it's not just about supporting a person in their role, it's supporting that person becoming integrated within the practice. So it doesn't have to necessarily be role related.
I see. Yeah, that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another question, which is about goals again. So the question is, what if the long-term goals of an owner are too far away for a current team? So, for example, if they just want to get work done, an owner wants to grow and open another clinic in X number of years. How do we deal with this? So I'd like your perspective. So, Dr. Endenberg, what is your perspective?
Okay, well, I can understand that. And I think the owner also has to make clear that this is the goal he or she wants to achieve in a couple of years. And it's also okay if people say, okay, that's okay, but I just want to get to work and I do the best I can, but don't bother me with it. I think you also can say then, well, every half year I will ask if it's still okay if we do it like that. But you also have to see and maybe to look for people, other veterinarians or vet technicians that want to come and to get this goal achieved together. So you also want to look at people that will help you to get there, to open the other clinic and to grow. But I also can understand very well that there are some people that say, just do whatever you can, just tell me what you want me to do and I will do it. That's also okay. That's a different type of person. They say, I just do it like that. And that's also okay, but I would check every half a year or something like that if it's still okay to do it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Endenberg. So one more question is, you talked about, Dr. Endenberg, about the well-being and the different roles and how important it is to have a diverse team. Now, not all teams are aware of diversity or of their talents and their strengths, individual talents and strengths. Do you think that all teams should go through this type of training to identify their personality styles, like do a Belbin training or a DISC or some other type of activity around this?
Well, I think that people should be aware of it, if they really should need a training. That's up to the team. Maybe some teams are saying, yeah, we want to do it, and see it also as some sort of a team building a day, or you can make a half a day training and half a day a party or something. But they should, at least they should be aware of it, and that it's very useful to have the differences, that they're aware of it. Because very often I hear people say, oh, he or she is not good at that. And I'm much better in that. And then I think, well, that's good if there's differences, but people tend to look at it in a very negative way. Well, I think you should celebrate it. That we are different. It's just the question, how do you do it together? So maybe not a formal training, but I can see it as a part of a team building day.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Dr. Endenberg. So I see that there's no more questions. We're now out of time, so I'd like to thank our speakers for their very informative presentations. And we would like to thank you for watching, and we hope you can take away some approaches to try in your practice. Now, this webinar will soon be available on the WSAVA YouTube channel, together with all of our other webinars. So please share it with your colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too.